Hello and welcome to yet another build guide. This is a BV Occultist, BV standing for Blade Vortex and Occultist being the Witch Ascendancy that specializes in curses and energy shield. I would say this build has been around for quite a while now. If I had to credit anybody for really bringing it to prominence and using fossil crafting to kind of take it to the next level, I would say it's Waggle. He's a very creative player, and he has made tons of builds that have killed Uber Elder successfully multiple times, this being one of them. This is a character that I made specifically for pushing delves, but I have used it for basically everything else in the game as well. I would say that it's incredibly fun to play. It's a build that has really neat interactions with some of the uniques in the game and the Ascendancy itself, that when you combine them together make for a really powerful playstyle. If I had to say in terms of damage, it was a little bit nerfed, but some of the powerful options that Betrayal League gives us kind of gives the power back to the build, so you won't really feel much of a loss in damage because we make up for it, but you will feel some of the other things. So a lot of the build has remained mostly the same from Delve League to this one, and this build has been known to push Delve 1200 to 1500. If you're really dedicated and you really invest in the character, it is capable of really remarkable results. So let's get into it. So the first thing we have to go over is that of energy shield recharge. As you can see, you take some damage, right? And you have to stay away from damage for a little bit, and energy shield will automatically regenerate by itself. Now, if you weren't an occultist, then taking damage would stop that energy shield from recharging. However, if you use Wicked Ward, once the recharge is started, for the next 4 seconds, it will not stop. So you can keep taking damage and you'll keep regenerating it back to full, so long as you ignore taking damage for that amount of time for it to recharge, right? And so we abuse this mechanic by using uniques that give us a ton of energy shield recharge rate, which makes it so that the energy shield recharge begins faster. So what are sources of faster energy shield start? Well, the first one is Apex Supremacy. So this one can give you up to 50% faster start of energy shield recharge. From the tree, we can get this node, which gives us another 15% faster start. There is a ring craft that gives you another 20%, and there is a Watcher's Eye that gives you up to another 40%. And so when you add up all of these together, you'll see here the recharge occurrence modifier for me is 121%. So normally energy shield recharge takes a few seconds to get started, but because we have such a high multiplier of recharge occurrence, basically if you don't take damage for about a second, your energy shield will recharge automatically. And so this build doesn't actually leech, right? We don't have a Ghost Reaver, and we use a very amount of life regeneration. So if you look at our life energy shield regeneration, it's 176, and when we compact something, we can put Consecrated Ground, which will give us another 300 or so. But that's very small compared to the amount that we get once our energy shield recharge begins, which is 4,000. So basically half of our energy pool is getting recharged every second. So, along with our very large and healthy ES pool and ES regen, we also use curses. The first one is Temporal Chains, and the other one is Enfeeble. These are both very powerful defensive tools. The Occultist has quite a bit of curse effectiveness, and we grab all the curse effectiveness on the tree, and that means that anything that is not a boss or unique will have basically no damage, and they will not move very quickly at all. It's an incredibly powerful option for delving because most of the time you're not fighting anything unique, so their reduced curse effectiveness is almost zero, unless it says something on a delve node, but that you don't encounter too frequently. So this build has most of its defense intact in delves, and that's really awesome. Let's go over the gear, shall we? So the first thing is, I need to warn you, this is not a budget build. To get this character to the power level that it is, I invested more or less 20 exalts. You can make this with less, you can make this with more. But if you're a new player and you think like this build is going to be super awesome, I would suggest starting with something much simpler to gear and then saving up and getting the gear together and then respecing to this character. You will have a very, very bad time if you skimp on any of the things that make this build powerful. So it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. You put it together and then it like fits nice and neatly and it like functions. So if you leave anything out, then all of a sudden you're missing a large chunk of your damage or a large chunk of your survivability, and then you're not having fun. So first thing is the weapon. I will go over this actually last because the crafting of this is the most complicated. The helmet is a hubris circlet. We're looking for the Hatred Mana Reservation enchant, and the reason for that is because of the nerf to the Shaper stat sticks in Betrayal League. We need extra damage, and the way that we attain this is that we incorporate Hatred into the build. And the reason why we can do this, even though Hatred costs so much mana reservation, is there is now an amulet that gives Temporal Chains basically no mana reservation, so we can cast it and have it up as an aura for free. And so with some aura reservation nodes, we can fit Hatred into the build, which more than makes up for the damage loss of the halving of the Physis extra. So the crafting of this is now done with good old dense fossils. So why dense fossils and not alteration or chaos crafting? The reason for that is there is a suffix mod called Of the Underground, as you can see, which is a suffix mod that gives increased energy shield. If you chaos spam a hubris circlet, you will never see this mod because it is only given by the dense fossil, so they're super OP. So the way that I crafted this one in particular is I just used a dense fossil with a shuddering fossil and a 2-socket. The reason why I use the shuddering is to block mana modifiers, which are prefixes, and so you want to have basically 3 energy shield prefixes. You can craft one on there like I did, and the Of the Underground suffix. And what I aimed for is to have about 340 to 360 energy shield. I got it and I was happy. I was able to get the resist, which was extra lucky. You can craft it just to get the energy shield mods by using a dense fossil, a corroded fossil, and a prismatic fossil, and a 3-socket chaotic resonator. Both of them are quite cost effective. However, if you use this, this blocks elemental modifiers, so you will not get fire resistance. So those are the 2 ways I think are the most cost-effective way. You either block the suffixes, so you get only energy shield mods, or you block mana. Occasionally you will get a speed modifier, which can be a waste of a mod, so that's why you end up using a lot more. Yeah, we use a Solstice Vigil. As I went over earlier, we get an Apep Supremacy. This thing is amazing. We are a Chaos Inoculation build, so Apep Supremacy synergizes incredibly well because it makes us immune to bleeding. Basically, we take chaos damage, we're immune to chaos damage, so bleeding doesn't do anything to us. And then the other layer of defense is while we are poisoned, right, we get 3 to all maximum resistances. And the way that we poison ourselves is we use a jewel that gives us a chance to poison on hit, which we do reliably because we hit a lot of times with Blade Vortex, and we use the golden rule. So poisons that we inflict on monsters is reflected onto us, and we don't take any damage from poison because poison is chaos damage and we're chaos immune. So it just gives us +3 to all maximum resistances. It's an incredibly awesome shield. I really love this idea for it. It costs about 3 exalts or 2.5 if you can really snipe a good deal. Totally worth it for this build. Core item. I would not replace this for anything. It's just super awesome. The chest. So we have a couple of options. I went for this one because it gives decent energy shield. The 19% of LE damage is extra chaos, which is pretty good damage, and the most important part about this, in my opinion, is 25% of elemental damage is taken as chaos damage. So once again, we are immune to chaos damage, so 25% of the elemental damage we take is completely shut down and nullified. On top of that, we already have +3 to all maximum elemental resistances, so when you combine these two together, elemental damage is something that we don't really worry about until very, very deep in delves. This build needs chill and freeze immunity, so we use dream fragments. I would say that this is something that you cannot replace. It's pretty much mandatory. It's really awesome. It gives you massive resists, decent mana, and of course the chill and freeze immunity. The ring we're looking for is a couple solid resistances, flat maximum energy shield, the curse enemies with level 8 assassin's mark, so we're using 3 curses, 1 offensive, 2 defensive, and then you craft the faster start of energy shield. There are two tiers of it. One of them is 1 exalt, which is quite expensive, and then the other one is cheaper. You know, once you get enough money, you can craft the 1 exalt one. I use energy shield gloves with as much energy shield as you can get on there. You can get resists. Attack speed is not totally necessary, but it's a nice bonus. The most important thing is just to have high energy shield. This costs about 1.5 exalt. The boots are the ones that kind of disappointed me the most. I wanted to have 30 move speed. I could only really afford to craft 20 move speed because I really needed the resists. You can definitely get higher energy shield as well, but this kind of served the purpose of the build, so I settled for these because of the 2 massive resistances, because this build really does need resistances. It uses a lot of uniques, so those elemental resistances, you have to find them somewhere. Boots, gloves, rings are really good sources for that. The belt, I went for a Pantheon blazon. You can also go for one called Baited Breath. Baited Breath is incredibly solid. The reason why I got these is because I needed stats, and I also really like Flask effect duration. This build heavily relies on its flasks, and you want them to last as long as possible, so Pantheon blazon is really good. And you can also get really cheap corruptions, so on top of that one, I also got Discipline, increased aura effect. You can get Hatred, aura effect, or you can get skill effect duration, which is really strong with all the duration buffs that we use in this build. So finally we get to the weapon. So the way that we craft this weapon, you'll see that you have a minion mod, and you're thinking, well, doesn't that only affect your minions? Well, they added a new node that if you take this, Spiritual Aid, increases and reductions to minion damage also affect you. So now all of these nodes are damage that you take advantage of, and this massive amount of minion damage is now also applied to you. So the way that we craft this is we use a bound fossil, we use a pristine fossil, we use an etheric fossil. So the bound fossil is the only way to get the minion modifier, right? Tier 2 is called subterranean, and the suffix that we're looking for is increased damage on full life, called Of the Underground. So those are the 2 main ones. The third one is fewer attack modifiers. Is really important because swords can roll, you know, elemental, physical, all these other really annoying things that kind of ruin your craft. So you use an etheric in a 3 socket so that you can get a lot fewer of those. And so what you're looking for, I'll say this slowly, is you're looking for the minion damage mod, you're looking for the suffix damage mod, and then you want 2 open prefixes and an open suffix, right? So I'll say it again. You want the minion damage mod, you want the damage on full life suffix mod, you want an open suffix, and you want 2 open prefixes. And then what you do is, once you have that base, you go and with your open suffix you craft cannot roll attack modifiers. Now when you craft that on a Shaper foil, right, at least item level 80, once you exalt it with the cannot roll attack modifiers, it basically guarantees that you get the Fizz extra damage. And so it costs 1 exalt to craft that, and then you slam it twice. So exalt it once and then exalt it again. So I can't go through the entire process of crafting everything because it takes quite a bit of rolls to get 2 open prefixes and an open suffix with the minion damage mod and the damage on full life. But this is one of the highest damage statistics that you can create for this build. It's really awesome, and it has a lot of resale value. So if you feel like crafting these and putting them up on the market, people do use these and they're really useful. Sometimes you can actually get the Fizzes extra with one of these mods, so it'll save you an Exalt. Let's go over the gems. Our damage dealer is Blade Vortex. This is largely unchanged, really powerful skill. We scale it with crit. The best option is a 2120 Evolve Blade Vortex. If you cannot get this, a 2020 Evolve Blade Vortex is fine. The way you get 21 is you get a regular Blade Vortex that's 2020, right? That means level 20 with 20 quality. And then in Alva's Temple in level 3 room, you use the Lapidary Lens on it, and it gives it a chance to give it +1 and turn it into a Vol skill. So if you get lucky on both counts, you end up with a level 21 Vol Blade Vortex. So we end up using increased critical strikes, increased critical damage, controlled destruction, and for clearing we use efficacy and increased area of effect, and for bossing we use power charge on crit and conk effect. Now when we're clearing, Assassin Spark on hit gives us power charges when we kill monsters, but against bosses we're obviously not killing as many monsters as we would like, so power charge and crit is really useful, and it also gives you more damage per power charge. I got this character to level 94. In level 96 I end up with another power charge, so I end up with 5, which basically makes it as strong as efficacy in terms of the damage, but also gives you the sustain of the power charges. We use Enlighten, Blasphemy, Enfeeble, and Temporal Chains. This is self-explanatory for the extra defenses. We use Enlighten, Discipline, Hatred. Vault Discipline is really awesome for this build because with the Energy Shield recharge, this also stops it from getting delayed by damage. So if you get hit by a really big hit and you think you're gonna die, you have an like an oh crap button, you press it, and then boom, you're gonna get healed right back up to full, and it's really awesome. You can optionally use Clarity level 1 here for the mana regen if you really need it. I don't need it. I like Portal Gem because I don't like to constantly open my inventory to drop portals. I just like it for emergencies, so I just use that. Increased Duration, Phase Run, Flame Dash, and Arcane Surge. If you link Ink Duration with Arcane Surge, you have about a 10-second long Arcane Surge, which is really useful for Blade Vortex. The play style is you get a bunch of blades up, and then you just phase run through mobs. Really simple. We use Conk Path, Fortify, faster attacks. The reason why we use Conk Path and not something like Shield Charge is Conk Path also drops Consecrated Ground. And if you use Zealot's Oath, the Consecrated Ground now gives you Energy Shield regen, so that's really good. And on top of that, Conk Path has like an instant zip on the animation, so it's really awesome for just like jumping from pack to pack. Really cool skill for movement and damage if you want to scale that, but this build doesn't do that. Cast when damage taken, Immortal Call, and Frost Bomb. You can use Cold Snap if you really wanted to. I like Frost Bomb. It gives you a little bit extra damage when it procs, and it slows the life and energy shield regen on some of the annoying mobs that have it in the game. Yeah, and I think that's it. In your offhands, you should be leveling in powers or enlightens. You get them to level 3, then you vault all of them, and if you get level 4, then you made a nice chunk of change. Let's go over the flasks. So first one is a crit build. Diamond Flask is mandatory. Immune to curses, really awesome. In Delves you don't really get cursed that much, but in the game you do. Maps have curse affixes on it, which Curse Flask just completely remove, so essential. Don't skip this. Sin's Rebirth, Unholy Might gives you 30% of Fizz damage as extra chaos damage, really awesome for damage. This build doesn't have a way to deal with Ignite, so immunity to Ignite is also very crucial. It also creates a smoke cloud on use, so when monsters stand near you, they just don't hit you, you dodge everything. It's really awesome. Next one is Good Old Taste of Hate. It gives you damage, physical damage mitigation, and cold damage mitigation. So this is basically everything that this build wants in a flask right there. You want a Quicksilver Flask of Adrenaline, just zoom around, move very quickly. And you want a Basalt Flask of Grounding to remove shock and have shock immunity. So something I notice noobs constantly mess up and they have a bad time over is they skip having some flasks that are really important to the build. Like you don't have curse immunity, so then the curses screw you over, or you don't have shock immunity, so you stand on shock ground and you just get blasted off the map. So don't you know, if you want to have curse immunity here and shock immunity here, fine, but just make sure you have all the things, because if you don't have all the things, then you're not gonna have fun when it happens to you. Additionally, we'll go over Pantheon. I think the best Pantheon for this build is Soul Solaris for the area damage reduction. You don't get hit too often, so the elemental damage reduction is good. And the take no extra damage from crit strikes if you've been crit is really, really awesome. It's such a powerful mitigation tool, because you take one big crit and then you just can't get crit again for another 4 seconds. The minor power, you have a choice between Tukohama and Yugal. Tukohama, if you're like really intent on just standing there and face tanking things, this gives you a little bit extra fizz damage and life regen if you get tossed in. This one you get Varhesh for the 5% reduced cold damage. This is completely up to preference. So let's go over the passive skill tree. This is kind of the cookie cutter occultist tree nowadays. You just get really efficient energy shield nodes, you get the crit nodes. You can path this a little bit differently if you wanted to. You can go this way and then grab this and skip this, but I needed actually 1 strength node so that I have 99 strength. The duration nodes, they affect everything that you use as a skill, so BV, Vol BV, Vol Discipline, you know, all that stuff is really good, so these nodes are really cool. All the curse effectiveness, make sure you get the energy shield recharge, and then you can go for the final energy shield here, the power charges here. So yeah, if you're gonna level this build, a lot of people ask me how I level the builds. Level with life first. So when you're leveling, you start here and you get the spell damage. Stormbrand is a really, really, really OP leveling skill. I cannot like state that enough. You end up with the brand here, you go over here, you end up with the brand nodes here, and then brand nodes here, and that's basically enough to carry you through all the game. You know, you grab some of the life here, some of the life here, some of the life here, and then once you get to level 70 or so, you know, and you have the gear ready for your character to equip, you just unspec that stuff, put it in all the essential energy shield nodes, and then equip all your gear. It's very simple to level as Stormbrand. You just drop the little wispy lightning thingies, kills all the monsters, and then you run to the next pack and you brand recall, and then all those monsters die, and you just keep running. It's very, very fast. It's so OP. Not least, what we do with our Ascendancy. So here we get Wicked Ward, Vile Bastion, Profane Bloom, Malediction. If you're leveling, I think the best case is to get Profane Bloom. If you can apply a curse early in the game, you have the curse explosions going off. Really, really awesome for clear speed, and curses can apply to hexproof enemies in the end game. Is really, really powerful. Actually, it's really good because a lot of maps have hexproof, a lot of delves have hexproof. This build just says no, I can do it anyway. Malediction makes it so that enemies deal additionally reduced damage and take increased damage. Which, you know, as I explained in other build guides, if enemies are taking increased damage, then that means you're dealing more damage to them, so it's a 10% multiplier. And then if you kill monsters, you also get more damage as extra chaos damage. Vile Bastion, don't skip out on this one. I would say that by Merciless you want this, and then you go up to Vile Bastion. Cannot be stunned while you have energy shield is so important for this build. If you decide to go this way and then you get Wicked Ward, you're just gonna get stun locked and killed all the time. So yeah, you really need to get Vile Bastion before you get Malediction. Tradition, I like to finish all my build guides with a map run, just to kind of give you an idea of how the build works, the smoothness of it, and give you my final remarks on it. This is a tier 16 Underground Sea, so monster level 83. The map is pretty basic. This one just had monster speed and crit, which this build handles exceptionally well. It's not a big deal at all. I think I just ran it with sack frags and Harbinger, but you can put really good sextants on this map still. It has 2 white sextants and 2 yellow sextants that you can easily put on it for extra juice. What you'll notice is my buff bar at the top, you have all these buffs, right? They're white. and then they turn blue, and that means that I've killed a rare monster. So for the next 10 seconds I have Shaper's Presence, and Shaper's Presence just means that the buffs expire more slowly, so they last about 50% longer. This is how you can abuse the Headhunter. If you really want to add a Headhunter to this build, it's completely possible. You just replace the Parandus Blazon with the Headhunter, and boom, you have a super OP build. I wanted to keep my 50 Exalts in my pocket and make this build a little bit less expensive, but for delving it's super OP because you just keep your Headhunter stacks throughout the entire duration of the delving counter, which is really strong. BV scales incredibly well with all the buffs that you get from rare monsters, as well as the defensive benefits of getting extra energy shield and all of that. But this build can do just fine without Headhunter. You don't need it. It just pushes this build to that next level because you can abuse it. I had a lot of fun playing this build. It's a little bit takes a little bit getting used to. You know, you have to like Flame Dash to keep Arcane Surge up, and then you don't want to like cast anything if you have your phase run up. If you're fighting really high-end bosses, you're gonna want to gem swap so that your power charges don't fall off. Here I think I just have like a quick fortification encounter. I just drop Vol BV and immediately shred him. So yeah, Syndicate encounters can be a little bit spooky depending on the map mods, but this build handles them really well. Here you'll see me fight this boss. They actually nerfed her a little bit. They gave her an extra phase, but you stick to her like glue with Consecrated Path, and you know, once you get your Vol BV going, the boss just melts immediately, and so it's no problem. And look at that, I got another Baited Breath, which you can also use in the build. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the build.